Awesome. And we're live. Everyone, thank you so much for joining. We are actually streaming live today. The last few, given time differences, I've had to record live and then stream. But Lawrence, who is a veteran radio producer, was extremely keen to go live. So for you, we've gone live, which is lovely. So thanks for joining me.
Sure. Thanks for going live. Whatever. If you're watching, whatever's happening where you are is happening here too. Now,
It's
if we aired it a
it's
couple days
good.
later and the economy crashes, you know,
Exactly. It's all good. And so I'm in. Well, you're in Baltimore,
I'm in Baltimore,
if that's
Maryland,
right. Yeah.
USA. Yeah.
Nice. I'm in France today. And as I was mentioning, my internet here for some reason is not super great. So if I have to revert to the old 4G on my phone, apologies in advance.
Okay with me. Yeah.
But let's dive in. So for those that don't know Lawrence, I'm going to give you a little intro, and then we can dive in. So Lawrence Lanahan, so journalist and radio producer, written for the New York Times, Washington Post, amongst others. And I came across you when I saw an article you'd written for the Hechinga report. I can never pronounce that one right. On the new labour market, no bachelor's degree required. For those in the UK, that's a university degree. For those in America, bachelor's. And so I thought it was fascinating, and so many people have been speaking about the importance or not of degrees when hiring. And it was just a great article, and so I reached out, and you were kind enough to to want to come and join me. So thanks so much.
Yeah. No, thanks. I appreciate you bringing me on. I'm glad the article resonated. It's there are a lot of people who don't have a bachelor's degree and have are trying to get skills or trying to get good jobs, and there are some good sustaining jobs for people, or at least that those people are qualified to do. It's just there are various obstacles to them getting there.
Yeah. So how did the article come about? And then yeah, how do you go about doing that?
Sure. It's just I have an editor I've worked with for years, and she's been at the Heckinger Report for a few years. And right before the pandemic, she had me write about degree inflation. And this is this thing where
Right.
the degree employers consider it worth more than it's really worth. They'll put a job listing up, and whatever the position is, plenty of people without degrees are doing it. Plenty of people without degrees could do it, but they think that the bachelor's degree is going to be this proxy for something, adaptability, soft skills, reliability. And so they just slap the bachelor's degree on and filter out everybody that doesn't have it.
Yeah.
And when the Great Recession happened, when the economy kind of collapsed, the housing market collapsed in 2008 here, um, lots of people lost their jobs. So, like any given job listing, there weren't that many. You had so many people applying that they had their pick. Like, oh, let's put a bachelor's
Yeah.
requirement on it, get the cream of the crop, and that just happened to a lot of job listings. So right after this recession, you had all these people being filtered out. After a few years, a lot of workforce advocates were kind of taking notice of this, and they came up with this pretty catchy term, degree inflation, and started advocating for people. One, they started trying to work with businesses like, hey, if you focused your hiring on skills rather than
Yeah.
degrees, you'd get more applications. And of course, you got to deal with that and filter how you will. But, you'll be getting talent, that otherwise be filtering out. And so a lot of work happened on this. And by 2019, when I wrote about it, you had like I profiled this computer coding boot camp. Like people that this guy, he had been to like in and out of community college. He was like 22. And he went to this 14-week coding boot camp and learned how to code. And like bang, he got a job at Houghton Mifflin, which is a education. They used to be just like textbooks, but now it's like online education materials. God, I think he was making $75,000, right? Just after doing this coding boot camp. And that's the unicorn, right? Like that's the magical
Yeah.
story of just go to a camp for 14 weeks and make all this money. But it was indicative of like this organizing that was happening to get people, in like, municipal workforce agencies, employers, trying to get higher education, getting all these people on board with how can we shift the lens for hiring to skills rather than degrees, right?
Yeah.
So before the pandemic, you already had companies kind of saying, okay, 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 especially like Accenture, um, Google started doing it, IBM's a big one, and so
Yeah.
then the pandemic hit, right? And everybody lost their jobs, but then were getting their jobs back, and the labor market tightened.
People
Um,
resigning.
yeah, but along the way, I wrote another story for Heckinger that you know, a year into the pandemic, enrollment at community colleges had completely tanked. These are colleges that are like 2 year. You get what's called an associate's degree. Um, if somebody's hiring for people with a 4 year degree, they're not going to pick these people up, but it can help you build skills, get at least more entry level jobs. Um, and it's a place that people stay for 3 4 years going in and out of school while they're working or life is happening. But that was tanking. The
Right.
people who are already kind of paycheck to paycheck, less stability in their lives. Before the pandemic, it was hard for them to stay in school. Now it was just like, I gotta work, I gotta whatever
Yeah.
job, work, get whatever money I can, help my family. And 4 year degree, enrollment
4 year degree.
at 4 years
Yeah.
has started going down too. So I wrote
So,
about that.
so even
Since
at,
then,
and is this even at the top universities in the US, or like
see,
where are you
that's picking back up. That's
right,
picking
okay.
back up. Those people will always probably do okay. You know what I mean? Like if you're going to a top 4 year school, it's more likely that both of your parents went have bachelor's degrees. The selective schools aren't losing, as much enrollment
And
as the
are they
others.
typically from a higher socioeconomic
Yeah.
background, these
hmm
folks?
hmm
Okay.
Yeah, but so for this story, my editor was like, "Can you put this all together, right? Like you've got um, more and more employers are turning to skills-based hiring and finding ways to hire or at least offer jobs to people without bachelor's degrees. So the sort of currency of a bachelor degree goes down a little bit if employers don't care as much about it. You have uh, fewer people enrolling in 2 and 4 year colleges. So there
Yeah.
goes the currency of the bachelor's degree even more. On the political right here, you have people saying that these are just elite institutions, that are indoctrinating people with wokest left, whatever, and so you've got opinion polling showing people fewer and fewer people find a bachelor's degree important. So all these factors are sort of converging to kind of take the shine a little bit off of the bachelor's degree. Yet culturally, at the top of the economic ladder and the bottom in America, the bachelor's is this not exactly a status symbol, but it's something people want for their kids. Like even if
It's
like if somebody didn't go to college, like my kid's going to go to college, and they see it as a ticket to the middle class. So it's this sort of struggle, like what's going to happen to the bachelor's degree, what's going to happen to um, higher education, what's going to happen in the workforce. Are you going to see inequality, reduced because people who are kind of low wage, low skills jobs are finally getting on a ramp onto training and onto these good jobs that you can get without a bachelor's degree. So it's really wide
yeah,
implications for diversity in the workplace, inequality, higher education, and the workforce.
yeah. It's interesting, yeah, because you, as a parent, you'd want your, you'd certainly like, get your kid going to university and getting a degree if you've not done that before, if you've never done that, if none of your family had gone to university and stuff. It's quite a proud moment, isn't it? Like your kid's
Sure.
made it to university, they've got a good degree. You feel like it's progress, don't you?
Well,
And
it's
then you
progress,
have,
and that everything you're doing along the way is toward that goal, And if
yeah,
everybody is doing that, are you going to be the sore thumb that's going to stick out? Like, oh no, my kid's going to do a trade.
yeah. And then also you have, in many countries, a lot of families, they work to send their kids to school. Like all of their money, it goes just on education.
And
In many,
governments here create, these savings 529 programs where it's like a mutual fund. Like if you can put tax free or whatever, put money into this one fund for your kids' college education. Every institution in this country supports higher education, maybe more than any kind of more realistic career workforce advancement.
Yeah. And look for some jobs, I mean, you need a degree, right?
Totally.
Like, I don't know if you want to be a
there
doctor.
always will be those jobs.
There's certain things where you need a degree, or you need, to learn the stuff, and that stuff happens to be taught at a university, and you'll get a degree at the end of it. And you can't be a doctor. Correct me if I'm wrong, unless you have a medical degree and you've gone and done your training and
Pretty
stuff
sure
like
my
that,
doctor
right?
has one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope.
But there's so that aside, I think for me, there's plenty of people in the world that have done exceptionally well and not gone to university. They've done it because again, like, your path is your path, and one might not be suited for university, or again, you might be better doing a vocation, or just circumstances in life have dictated that it's not your path right now. You got to
the
go
amount,
work.
there's $1.7 trillion in higher education debt in the United States right now,
How
outstanding.
much? What, 1.7?
1.7 trillion.
Wow.
And if you can't just rely on, like, oh, my parents are going to pay for this, which is most people are not going to just be like, oh, whatever, $200,000 worth of education in the next 4 years, yeah, I can swing that. It really forces you into assessing the value of a bachelor's degree in a way that 10, 20 years ago you didn't have to. I mean, I went to a state college, like in America, it's like your state government kind of oversees a higher education system. And I think I went from 1993 to 1997. I think tuition and everything was like $10,000 a year. Not going to happen now.
So what is it now, roughly?
I'm guessing, go look it up. I hate saying anything without fact checking it myself, but I would say that school is probably somewhere between $20,000 and $25,000 a year.
Okay, yeah. So it's an investment, right? And if
investment.
Yeah, and I think also, like, I hate to, with social media and stuff. I mean, you often get sucked into thinking as an individual, man, I've got to go to university. I've got to do this, and I've got to do this and stuff. And I think, I think you've got to take a moment and assess, like, where are you at, and where you want to get to, and it's fine to try different stuff, and maybe you do go to university if you want to later on in life, or maybe you do it now, or maybe there isn't like this is the way you've got to do it.
There's not, but I feel like that's kind of nerve-wracking for a lot of 17-year-old Americans who, you know what I mean, like, who at 17 is self-possessed enough and self-aware and self-motivated enough and experienced in the world to have one, much less several potential paths, their professional paths they're thinking about, right? College is this hoop that you can jump through. The hoop, exactly where the hoop is, exactly how high you have to jump to get through the hoop. And for me, growing up, in a suburb, no experience in the world, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just was like, oh, I guess I should just, like, try to get good grades in high school, and then I can go to college and try to get good grades in college so I can get a good job. And I jumped through hoops, right? I went to college. I partied too hard my freshman year and said, whoa, okay, I want to graduate with this grade point average, and I worked towards it, and I got it. I got a job, and then I was like, oh, I like doing this job, but I need to work somewhere that'll pay for my master's degree, because there's the next hoop to jump through. And I did that. I got a different job. They paid for my master's degree. I jumped through that hoop. And then I was 30, and I had no idea why I was doing the kind of work I was doing. That's when I took the risk and knew myself well enough to be like, no, what I want to do is journalism. And it was much harder to, like, get into that career. So who at 17 is going to be like, oh, here are the possible paths, and I'm going to do this, and maybe college, but I can do. It's just this big hoop with a very clear way to jump through it, and everybody's telling you need it.
If you don't, if you're not fortunate enough to be born into an environment where people can advise you, on your path, like what to do. Like in the UK, you've got to choose. You've got to choose earlier. Like you've got to choose your GCSEs, and you're choosing at like 13, 14. If you want to be a
Right.
doctor, you've got to
Yeah.
choose it early on, right? If you're not lucky enough to have that, and it's scary and it's daunting. I hope doing stuff like this, diving on YouTube, using social media, young people have access to content like this that can, that they can learn, and they can say, look, do you know what? Actually, I can't afford to go. I need to work. I maybe need to work 2 jobs, 3, whatever it is.
Right.
You need to grind. You need to work hard and stuff, and that's your path, and that's fine. And it doesn't mean that you can't work your way up and all of those things. On the other side, even if you have a degree from a good university, and yes, I think on average, and again, I need to be fact checked on this, but I suppose you go to a private university, you're more likely to be earning more money than if you haven't.
Yeah, I mean, but what's happening is like, I mean, I mean, you all in the UK might even have a more rigid class system than we do. Not that we don't, but the institutions are the ones creating these hoops and these paths. And what's happening now, what was really interesting in the reporting is that, these institutions are starting to rethink this, right? Like, okay, how can we, one, hire more people without bachelor's degrees? And then it's like, okay, we got to train it. How can we train more people so that they can do this job without the degree? And now the step that they're taking, which I saw in my reporting, was how do we get them into the training? Because the
Yeah,
thing that kept coming up, that Joe Fuller, who's a professor of management at the Harvard Business School, I always talk to him for these stories, and he says these people will tell you they can't afford not to work, which is a
yeah,
confusing phrase, but what it means is they're in these low wage, low skilled jobs, right? And they might have to work 2 or even 3 of these kinds of jobs to make enough money to get by, take care of their family. Lots of these people I talk to in this situation use this word that is shorthand for all the disruptions that can happen to them. It's called life. They'll be like, well, yeah, then life happened. Life got in the way. Like their mom got sick. They got their company shut down. Um, they got into medical debt because our healthcare system is what it is in America. So um, to get from that situation into training for a better job, you need time and you need money to pay for the training. So what I'm finding are these new things where they're finding new ways to finance training. They'll reach out, recruit these people, and say like, look, we'll pay for you to get a Google certification or 5 weeks training in becoming a mechanic for diesel trucks, whatever. Um, and you only have to pay us back, monthly, whatever the payment is, if you get a job above a certain salary level,
right.
right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
the way they pay for that is through impact investors. These are people who invest in the company that is paying for the training. Um, um, so they do get money back from the people who train. If they get the job that pays enough, they'll pay back, but
yeah,
they make up the rest through philanthropy and impact investing. So they're creating a financial infrastructure to bring people who are stuck, who can't afford not to work, into this pipeline, get them the training. And that's the people I wrote about in the story, that got, they were working. One of them was working at a Nike, the shoes, Nike retail store for minimum wage, living with his parents, and just saw this thing on Indeed.com that he thought was, too good to be true. They were looking for minorities who don't have a bachelor's degree. He's like, that's me, and he did it. And they gave him a small stipend, which he used for a bus pass to get to. I mean, they didn't just do the
yeah,
training for Google certification. They did mock interviews, career counseling, all
brilliant.
this stuff, and he took the bus to go to that, and he got a job doing a help desk, computer help desk person, making pretty good money, enough to pay them back. And then he got promoted. Now he's managing the help desk. So they get you into these like entry level jobs with various paths for advancement. And so these people can't afford not to work with the right financial infrastructure, can get out of the muck, can get into
Yeah,
this
yeah,
pipeline.
yeah. And I love that. I think there's two things here for me. It's if you're hiring, and let's move on to that, because there's been, I think I read this a few weeks ago. I'm sure that's still the case, but let's see if that changes in the next few months. But I think there's one candidate for every two open vacancies in the US right now,
It's a tight
something like
labor
that.
market. It's a tight
Tight
labor
labor
market.
market. What we've never been very good at, I don't think, if you look back in history, is we've never been good at, as a society, of retraining people. Of training people to get the skills to the jobs that we need to be done now. There's you look back the last 10 years. I mean, there are so many new jobs that have been
And
created.
technology is creating new jobs all the time.
Incredible, right?
But
Incredible type.
the education system, at least in America, has got a thing about vocational education. Like there's been a shift away from it. It almost has a stigma. And a couple of states like California and some other places are finally like trying to create some sort of consistency from like high school or even middle school up through community college or wherever, to get kids into professions and get training and get internships when they're young. But if you've got this sort of, if you valorize the bachelor's degree the way we do here, that makes the workforce less flexible, because like so many kids go into college and they don't know what they want to do, and they major in something that may be intellectually important, to them, or but they
It's
they end up
interesting.
working at the coffee shop or whatever.
Well, what's interesting is whether you are going to and Kelly mentioned here $80,000 on the comments to go to a private university versus 25,000 for a public. Both are expensive. But whether you go to your private university or you don't, and you work your way up somewhere, like everyone's human and everyone has these same things going on in their minds. Like, well, what do I do with myself? Because let's say you've gone this route of you've done your school, you've got top grades, you've gone to the top university, you've done your MBA, you've come out. It's still like, right, what do I do now? Because you've kind of been told what to do your whole life, right?
Yeah.
You go to this, it's a given, right? Let's say in your scenario, it's a given you're going to university. It's a given and you're still like, what do I do with my life?
Yeah.
And even if you're the other kind of scenario where you're not going to university, you can't afford it, you can't afford not to work. To your point, don't let that derail you. Don't worry about the things you can't affect. And some of these things you can't change. Like that's your scenario. I always talk a little bit about like being the CEO of your life, CEO of your career.
Right.
Do the things that you can control to put yourself in the best scenario, the best way to earn more money, to continue learning. Even the learning the skills and stuff. You have these MOOCs, massive online learning
Hmm.
communities. All of the top universities in the world offer free courses online you can do from home, paid ones, at
Yeah.
much lower rate. And so there's loads of opportunities for you as an individual to go learn,
And
and you can do that.
there are also, like, if you want to, so the Federal Reserve Bank here in America has like local outposts, right? And so the Philadelphia Federal Reserve is into this issue, and they built a website where like you punch in what jobs you've had, what skills you have from those jobs, and it automatically, you click and it's like, here are some other fields, here are some other jobs where those skills are transferable, that jobs that pay more. You know what I mean? Like you might
Yeah,
even
yeah.
have more than you realize. But it's all about right now these institutions, the government, the workforce, employers, um, focusing on these people and creating infrastructure for them to be more mobile, to transfer to different careers. The other thing
Yeah.
is that I was talking to Tony Carnevale at Georgetown University. He has the Center for Workforce and the Education. He's one of these rare people that's looking at both the workforce and the education. Um, and he said that, you know, what's getting to be important is less the prestige of the institution, like which college you went to, and more what you majored in, what field you are. He said that 40% of people with bachelor's degrees make more than the average person with a graduate degree because of the field of study. That 30% of people who have a 2-year degree make more than people with a 4-year. And he's pushing for more transparency at these colleges of like where these students end up in various fields of study. Like there's the college scorecard. It's a website you go to. I went to it. I punched in like
Right.
what major I had at what college. And then I looked at the other majors for my college and it was like, oh, I should have majored in econ, not sociology, because they're making $20,000 more a year, you know. So it's just the data can help, the institutional push can help kind of reshape how we do this, but it's got to go deep into the education system. There needs to be more focus on vocational education. There needs to be more people want to get quick certificates, quick training, right? They don't want to get a 2-year community college degree. And so right now there's a bill in committee in the Congress, the US Congress, that would take the Pell Grant, which has always helped lower income students pay for college, would make the Pell Grant applicable to short-term training, you know, and but only for nonprofit training institutions where their average students see like a 20% jump in their wages or something. Like there's a lot of transparency built in.
What's interesting is also we had a comment from Amira, which was really interesting. In fact, let me stick Amira on here, because I wanted to chat about this. Hi Amira. People need to be having this conversation before they go to university so they can make the right decision early on. I mean, the thing I'd love to see at school and university is a lot of schools and unis, they don't teach people the skills they need for when they leave and when they go into the workforce. Like, you know, some of the skills that you need to be successful in work, you know, building relationships with people, networking, being able to have difficult conversations with folks that you fundamentally might completely disagree with, but not raising your voice and having a nice chat and still being able to work next to each other in a high performing team. And just, you know, the importance of having a great ground game, like turning up on time, you know, being smart, just these little basics, being reliable,
learning how to be accountable. Yeah.
Accountable, reliable, being there for people, you know, all of these different things where you just don't get taught it at school.
And practical opportunities. I mean, when I was in college, I did like a liberal arts degree in sociology at a state college. I could have, you know, graduated. I mean, I was like a lot of people with bachelor's degrees, you know, you're 22, you finish college and you're just helpless. Like you know, as an older adult, I've worked with people who just came out of college and they're just kind of helpless, you know, like what do you just do this, or like, let's talk about it, you know? So I had an internship my very last semester with the Office of Institutional Research at my college. They did this campus life surveys, stuff like that. And the guy let me crunch the data. He let me use statistical software. I learned how to, you know, deal with data and analyze it and write about it. And that was huge. I know that's why I got my first job. And the second job I had a job as a researcher for 7 years, and it was that. And I learned how to have a boss. You know, it was a small shop. There's only a few of us, but I learned how to be on time. And so if I hadn't had that experience, I would have learned that on the job, and I might not have been very impressive. So you're right. This stuff has to happen. Like Amira said, you know, even before you get to university. I mean, you can, whatever, the jobs you have when you're 16, you have a boss and it's a job and everything, but it's not usually very high stakes, you know.
But I learned, I mean, I tell you, I did my paper. You can't do this anymore. I used to go and deliver the newspaper. Had my bag on, I had to turn up at 5:30. You know, you just learn from every experience, but put yourself out there. And I think what you'll find, if you ask people for help, you ask people, can I, you know, a lot of people will say yes, because a lot of people like to help. Look for, you know, even look for a mentor in your area, someone that, you know, isn't just going to be like, yeah. Someone who's going to be honest with you and give you some proper feedback. And again, it's flattering to be asked these things. And so I think you find if you ask, people will help. I want to just stick on as a lovely comment from Victoria, which I just want to share because it's again for folks that feel that maybe they need to go to university well in life. And she said, I can't afford to go to university when I was a teenager. I got top grades, but even with the scholarships, I couldn't afford it. I decided to set up a business, sold the business last year. Now I'm going to university 7 years later than originally planned. An unorthodox route, but I learned so much along the way.
I've
Awesome.
taught at university, and that's always the kind of student I got along with best. They knew why
That's
they were
great.
there. They knew why they were
Yeah.
there. They knew what they had learned, and they had learned how to learn before they
Yeah.
got to the place where they came to learn.
Good.
That's
So
going to set you up for success.
Yeah, and I think the message for me is your path's your path, and everyone's got a different one. And Victoria's taken her path. Everyone's different, and so the more people realise that, I think it then just you can go about doing your thing and create your own path. And it's hard, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff that you can do to get there.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit before we go about hiring. And I'm seeing more and more hiring managers start to take off degree required from the job descriptions.
You are.
Because I'm seeing it. There's talk about it. I don't know the stats. I still see an awful lot of people wanting degrees. And to your point right at the beginning, it's kind of a safe thing. It's like, right, what are the list of requirements? Degree,
Yeah.
an MBA, experience from a similar firm, sector experience. A lot of folks, it's moving towards skills-based hiring, but I think we're still a way off where we need to be. And I still think also that the problem has been, if you're middle management and you've been asked to go hire someone, and you hire someone without a degree or without the industry experience, and they don't work out,
right,
you're a little bit worried that your boss is going to be like,
it's on you.
Sorry, mate, you're out. It's on you. You're out. So I think it needs to be from the top. They need to be giving hiring managers in the organization permission, or even telling them, take degrees off, decide on what skills you're looking for this particular role, and be more thoughtful about the hiring and how you interview and why you're hiring someone. And then that will hopefully widen the gates, give more people the opportunity to apply for these things.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the hiring managers need training. Their bosses, the CEOs, need to have an explicit mission to do it. Like, we're changing how we do this, and this is why. And they need to, once they've got the results, demonstrate that. Like, look, whether it's data or storytelling or whatever, like, look, we changed the way we're dealing with our workforce here, and it's for the better. This didn't make it into my story, so I talked to this woman who did the Google certification training through one of these places that finances the training, got a help desk gig. And I talked to the hiring manager where she works, and she says, right now it's a huge help to the industry because, it'll make the industry more diverse, because disproportionately Black and Hispanic people in America have fewer bachelor's degrees. It gives her a bigger pool of applicants, which in a labor shortage is a help. And I'll tell you, the labor shortage, you got two things going on in the next few years. One is a potential recession, which you would think would loosen up the labor market. But also, there are going to be fewer people. The fertility rate dropped, especially during the Great Recession. People didn't have as many kids in 08, 09, and 2010. And those people are going to be coming into the workforce soon. So, you're going to want that bigger pool of applicants. And she says, even if they have the wrong certifications or whatever, like she says, you can always train up. You can always train the technology. In this pool of people who don't have the degree but are hungry and are looking for opportunity, she says, I'm looking for that attitude, the communication skills, the eagerness to learn. Another guy I wrote about in the story, in the beginning of the story, he went and he just took like a year off. He was in retail. Took a year off, got his certifications. And the first job he went to go get. The hiring manager's like, well, we're looking for somebody with a degree, but he really pushed it. I'm looking for the opportunity. And the guy took a chance on him, like you're saying. The hiring manager is taking a chance. And in this case, it worked out. And he recognized that opportunity. And that guy also became a mentor to him.
Nice.
And he's done well
Love
since.
that. Love that.
But
Love
but
that.
you're right. You've got this middle level of hiring, and I've been in that situation, like having to hire people, and you have to. It's a gut sense of, is this person doing this because they feel like they're supposed to do it, or is this like make sense in their story of like this is where they want to be, and they're, for me it's like, okay, they've never produced, like when I worked at the radio station, okay, they've never edited audio. I can teach you how to edit audio, but can you tell when a guest is being boring? Do you know where to cut the audio out? Do you have good ideas of what we should be talking about on the radio? Do you read the newspaper every day? Do you know who your elected officials are? If you don't have a degree, I don't care. Like, I didn't care. They all did. I mean, nobody without degrees is really applying to that kind of job, but it's just, there has to be purpose. The person applying for the job has to have a sense of purpose. The people hiring have to have a sense of purpose of like, do they want to do anything beyond make the money and have an easy job, easy time hiring? Do they want to really increase diversity, create pathways for advancement for, disadvantaged populations? It's just, if people are just jumping through hoops, whether it's into the job or to go find the people you're hiring, you keep having inequality, you keep having a less successful company. It's just a sense of purpose that's needed on all sides.
Yeah, 100%. And then, think of, reality, the hiring managers they just need a job filled, right? They might be short-staffed, they've had resignations, they've offered people, they've not taken it, they're desperate, there's current staff are overworked. And then it's, then it becomes maybe a little bit about for them survival. It's just, I just need folks in. Maybe they're getting so many applications, and a lot of these large companies, you have AI filtering it before it even gets to human.
Yeah.
And, and we'll see, if a recession comes, hopefully it doesn't, and it won't be so bad. If something comes and suddenly there's more candidates than there are jobs, then let's see if they use it as a filter. Again, are they going to go back?
It's very easy to check that box.
Just click it on.
Very
degree.
Easy. But
no one knows, stick it on.
Yeah, I mean, the same workforce organizations and management people like Joe Fuller that are trying to get people trained for this stuff, they're also working with employers to show them like the reports that Joe does always have something like, if you are hiring, like, here's all this stuff you can do to get people based on skills. Here's what you can do with your AI to orient it towards these people rather than away from them. The resources are out there to learn how to do it, even in a recession. I think you saw enough data before the pandemic that showed that companies are taking steps to do this, that I think you will see them retain during the recession some degree of not just relying on bachelor's degrees. But it's so easy and tempting when you get flooded with applications to just be like, right, just give me the ones with the BAs. But like one of the people I talked to that runs one of these training nonprofits, she said that when you filter out bachelor's degrees, you're filtering out like a majority of the Black and Hispanic talent that you could have had coming your way. And it's not just Black and Hispanic. Wherever you live, whatever the populations are that have been sort of had the obstacles to economic and academic advancement. But it's just these institutional decisions, and it's not like somebody's up at the top saying like, how can we screw these people? It's just like you said, the hiring managers are frantic. It's very easy to rely on the way you've always done things. The things
a lot of people,
the way of doing things.
It's, you just revert back to type. It's like a lot of people hire for pedigree over potential. It's way easier to say, they went to one of my competitors, they must be good, let's get them in. or I know Accenture does great training, so these people must be good. Let's get them in. And it's harder and it takes more time and effort to think about, or does this person have potential to do great? Because just because someone's done a job before, it doesn't mean they're going to be good at it, or they are good at it. And just because someone's done a degree doesn't mean they're going to be good at the job you're hiring for. It's a bit more thought. And then I think also for the individual as well, because I think like some people get caught up in it's really hard, I'm not going to make it. So, and it's, I think try and have this mentality of, don't worry about the things you can't affect, and you can do it. Like you've got to work hard, you've got to put the effort in, network like crazy, learn as much as you can from wherever you can and from whoever you can.
Yeah.
And people will recognize, and it might be that you get your job because you worked for someone and they just recognize how good you were and they've moved on and they take you with them, or the world works like that, with networks.
No, you stick with those people. My editor didn't always work at Hechinger Report, but I've followed her,
That's it.
elsewhere, and I keep getting work. The thing about these jobs is like that they think if things, if this movement towards skill-based hiring continues, one report says there's going to be 1.4 million jobs through 2027 for people without degrees. Just during the pandemic, like 700,000 of these so-called opportunity jobs opened up. But the thing is, like, only about 40 in 10 years, only about 40% or 30% of jobs will be available to people without bachelor's degrees, and only about 40% of those jobs will be good jobs that can really support you. And in the long run, like you go in the short run, going to get specific training, certifications, whatever, getting an IT job, making all this money. In the short term, it serves you really well of getting out, up into this, path to a good job. In the long run, a bachelor's degree economically does serve you better and will.
Yes.
And so the guy I talked to, Tony Carnevale, he's like, the people that know how to go get the specific skills to like make those incremental advancements in their job, that will help them a lot. But it's the bachelor's degree and the adaptability that comes with it that will serve them in the long run.
So it's still valuable to do. Like if you can afford to get one, it's worth it.
Yeah, and college is not over. But if you can't, there are these new pathways to at least get yourself on solid footing. And a lot of the people I talk to for the story, who are like, I had a hard time getting a job because I didn't have a degree, and then I found this opportunity to allow me to get training and get a good job without a degree. Most of them were like, yeah, I'm going to finish my bachelor's. I'm going to do it. Only one person didn't. There's a woman whose parents, her dad did not have a degree and just beat it into her. You got to get a degree. You got to get a degree. She took all the college-oriented classes in high school, did really well, but ended up getting trained to fix diesel engines, and she has changed her mind. She's like, I'm going to teach my kids to go into the trades.
Wow.
And she's doing pretty well for herself.
Yeah, you got to do what works for you. I mean, I think, for me, education's like cornerstone, continued learning and development. And whether that is a degree for you or, you're reading a lot, you're learning via online communities, you're diving onto YouTube, whatever it is, you've got to continue to learn. And also, career-wise, think about what's your career going to look like in 5 years or 10 years, or is your job going to still exist? And you need to keep on moving forward and continue to learn and stuff. And
I think you also need people who are going to teach you how to learn. Like you need to learn, especially in America right now, you need to learn how to be a citizen. You need to learn how to process information and be critical about information. There's like all this, and just a classical education is good, a good, philosophical grounding, all that stuff. I'm glad I got a bachelor's degree. I learned how to learn. I love still taking courses in this or that, I love reading about the world and trying to understand how it works. That's all important, like the economy doesn't happen in the silo. You know, it's great that people are going to get trained to make money and be stable, and there would be less inequality. But ultimately, we're all citizens of various nations and residents of various regions. And if we don't understand what's really happening, the economy is going to collapse anyway.
Yeah. No, I mean, absolutely. I went to university as well. And I mean, it's way cheaper in the UK, by the way, way cheaper. But I learned a lot. I mean, I learned about the topic I did, which was chemistry, which of course I'm not using now, but I learned again how to think and how to live with other folks, and just a lot of stuff, you know, around that. The interesting debate was always like, hey, should I just take the money and go buy a property or make some investments in the stock market? And would that do me better in the long run than investing in your education? That's always an interesting conversation.
It is, and I mean, and if you invest wisely, become a rentier, and you'll have all the time in the world to go to university if you want.
Yeah, you go to study. Absolutely. What a great place to end. Lawrence, thank you so much for joining. Absolutely love it. I'm going to keep a lookout for all of your stuff. And then can people find you on Twitter and obviously LinkedIn and so forth?
L Lanahan is my Twitter thing. LLANAHAN. Take that and put @gmail.com. I'm happy to answer anybody's email. You know, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm learning how to use it. Speaking of learning how to be a good
well, look, just on LinkedIn,
learn how to get work. I'm learning LinkedIn.
Well, LinkedIn is a great place to learn and to make connections and to get job opportunities. So, again, if you're there, and if you're watching and you're trying to do that, just dive on. It's free. You can like, comment, speak with folks. It's brilliant. So, Lawrence, thank you so much.
It was an interesting conversation. I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure.
And thanks everybody for tuning in and for your great comments.
Thank you. Have a good one.